If you saw Beatles Anthology, you probably remember Ringo saying that if he were to tell his story, the Ringo Starr Anthology, he'd probably be putting different things in his story than he did in the Beatles Anthology, which makes sense because everybody has their own unique memories. Everybody has a different take on the exact same event.
What a guy. I never knew that.
And that reminded me of those 4 Sam Mendes Beatles biopics that are supposed to be coming out in 2028. Because aren't those supposed to be basically 4 different anthologies? They're all telling the Beatles stories, but from their unique perspective, from the 4 unique perspectives. So they're also telling the John story, Paul story, George story, and Ringo story with the underlying Beatles story there. And if any of them are going to be going first, or say if one is going to be released first, I think the first one should be about Ringo. Ringo should star the first one. Because in my opinion, he has the most unique perspective of all of them. And plus, he also has this wonderful hero's journey that I think a lot of people could relate to, that not everybody knows about. And that if their goal is to introduce more people, younger people to the Beatles and get these young people hooked into the Beatles and get them to fall in love with them, then Ringo is our man. Because Ringo does have that very relatable, emotional story where he's that sickly kid, almost dies, doesn't get to go to school very much, but nonetheless he perseveres and he grabs onto the drums and eventually becomes that top Liverpool drummer, meets the Beatles and joins the Beatles, and the rest is history. And he is a real life hero that everybody can latch onto. Plus, because of his unique perspective, we can get to know the others. We can look over Ringo's shoulder and get to know John, Paul, and George, because Ringo, he had to break into the Beatles, because John, Paul, and George, they were already, like a band of brothers, and they'd known each other for many years. And here's Ringo, like he's a professional and he knows what he's doing. Okay, more professional than them. And that's the other thing that I would love to see on the screen. And I think Ringo would love to see that on the screen, that Ringo was a pro. And here's the scruffs down here. But anyway, so Ringo has to break in with these guys and he has to get to know them. And that is no easy task. So definitely he's used to hardship already. And so this is another hardship here, just kind of being himself, being very laid back and easygoing and affable and flexible. And he really fits in with the Beatles with his personality, but he still has to break in. And we heard George talking about how he said, hey, Ringo, go sleep with John now, or go hang out with Paul now. So he definitely had to fit in, so we can look over Ringo's shoulder and get to know the Beatles and that dynamic and watch everything from behind the kit along with Ringo. I think that would be a great way to tell the Beatles story. And, and Ringo's troubles, don't stop when he joins the Beatles, because also, as we saw, he's not allowed to play on Love Me Do.
It was devastating.
And he's also kind of left behind, or he's left behind on that first world tour for a week or so.
Because I wasn't well and they'd taken Jimmy Nichols and I thought they didn't love me anymore, and all that stuff went through my head.
And in 1995, as we saw, he still bears those scars, unfortunately, poor Ringo. So we all love Ringo and we are all rooting for our hero here. So his story just, obviously he triumphs and everything is super and everything is great. But me, I love an epilogue. So I would love these Mendes movies to continue a little bit past 1970. So maybe 1973, 74, where they're all doing pretty good. But I really want Ringo's story to be told first, because I love the idea of knowing more about Ringo, and everybody could just fall in love with him, fall in love with everybody at the same time, get really excited and ready for who comes next, which is John. Okay, John comes next in my world, and then Paul, and then George. George is the last one there. But Ringo is our leader here. Ringo is our opener here. Ringo is our everyman. Ringo is us, as we're sitting there learning all about the Beatles. And Ringo is teaching us too. Ringo is our philosopher. And let and what do I mean by Ringo is a philosopher here? Ringo has definitely learned a lot on his hero's journey and therefore can teach us a lot. And here's a quote from Ringo in 1998. This was a question to him. Does he ever look back on it all and think, if only this or that had happened instead? And Ringo answers, what you do in life is realize that everything you do in life, you're not going to win. Everything we did as the Beatles didn't succeed, but certain things remain. What you've got to remember is that the honor is in the trying. That's Ringo Starr. Now that is definitely our elder statesman, and we love that, and he deserves to go first. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I really and truly appreciate it. And until next time, peace and love one another. Take care.
Beatles is Beatles are Beatle. In the end, it's like, oh, sod off with the Beatles,